am traffic engineer Erica Smith, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Sorry, caught me in a drink. So I've looked over everything. I do have a couple of questions and one comment. My first question is, do you have a name for this? And because I'm leading to something.
Redwood.
Just Redwood?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because in the plans here prepared by Davy Group, it's called Redwood City of Vermilion. Not that big of a deal, except if this is approved and it moves forward, that really should be changed to Vermilion Township before you file any documents, just
Agreed.
so down the road, there's
My
no
apologies.
confusion. Yeah, no problem.
That should not happen. I'm not sure, like, my apologies. It says, like, when I'm looking at the approved plan, it says the Township of Vermilion, County of Erie.
Right. Yeah, not a problem. This one here, it's got Redwood City of Vermilion on it.
That's the landscape plan.
Okay,
So we
I
can
We'll
can
take
just
care of
adjust it.
Yep.
change that.
noted. We'll take care of it.
There was something else that I noticed. There was a water easement coming down from the north, coming through Line Street. What is that for?
You wanna speak to that better than me?
Sure, but
It's because the county required that, but go ahead.
Yeah, Matt Duncan, Davy the Swiss Group. The reason for that is the county requested that we tie in so that we could loop the water main. So we're not just tying in onto the water main on State Route 60. They wanted us to tie in to the water main, existing water main on Wine Street.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. Other questions?
I got a few, but I guess I'll start with mine. The final development plan, who takes responsibility for getting that certain right and saying it's good? I guess, is that you guys, or is it somebody else, or your engineer? Or I'll give you an example. On this front page here, it says gas wells, none located on the ODNR well viewer. Well, there is one. There is a gas well. It's an orphan well. It's up next to the house. And when I went to the ODNR viewer, I found it. So I don't know if your engineer just missed it because he was in the wrong mode of the ODNR's website. But the concern here is that a well, an orphan well, has to be capped. You can't just obviously build a house over a well. And in order to do that, you need to get a permit from ODNR. And that's a process that has not yet been achieved. So I have concerns that that process has been overlooked. And I don't want you to go, oh, you know, we were gonna start building, but now we've discovered we gotta do this. So instead of building and then saying, oh, we gotta fix it, I figured I'd point it out and say, yeah, that's there's that one.
Can I speak to that, if you don't mind?
Yes, please.
Actually, we already have a contract with an ODNR representative, that will cap that well in like the next 3 weeks.
Okay. So you are aware of it, it's just.
Of course.
We don't have that information here in front of us. You see the disconnect there?
No. As a developer, we need to know exactly what's going on with our property when we purchase something. And we do know there was a gas well there, and we're taking all the assurances with ODNR and what we're going through to cap that well. And the sellers know that, and we've been working with them on that.
Okay.
We can adjust we can fix that on the sheet. I guess if you could make that part of the.
Our zoning resolution is very specific on all the requirements that are required to give you the PUD. And when we give you a PUD, and I'm just spitballing it a little bit here, says that we're gonna take away all the existing zoning on the property. It's no longer gonna be agriculture, it's just gonna be PUD. And when we do a PUD, we have to set the parameters for that piece of property as far as setbacks and the like. We have to determine that. So if we wanna say you have to have sidewalks, we need to say that here. Because as Chairman Kurtz pointed out several months ago with the old Redwood, we didn't cover that. The other trustees before us didn't cover that, and it got missed. So he's extra cautious, and I'm extra cautious to make sure we don't miss anything. So 5 to 10 years from now, when there are different people sitting in these chairs, they don't look back and look at us and go, oh, those guys missed everything. So we're gonna be extra cautious.
We appreciate that.
Cover every detail, both for you and for the property owner that's gonna sell.
Mhm.
One of the questions that I had that I put to Mr. Bennett earlier today was, for us to change the PUD, it has to be at the request of the owner. And right now, Redwood is not the owner. So I'm just a little concerned that we can't approve it until you are the owner. So I guess my first question is, when are you guys gonna be the owner?
When we get, oh, okay. We cannot own the property
Okay.
until we get our loan from the bank. And we cannot get the loan from the bank until we have final approval.
So you're telling me it's a catch-22 for you?
I don't think it's catch-22 at all. I'm just saying that once we have our final approvals, then we go to the bank and they give us the construction loan. And that's how that works.
I've known, from projects that I was involved with when I was with the city that, typically the way it's looked at is if they have a option on the property, you have a purchase agreement
Yes,
to purchase the property, so that's the legal binding thing that says they're going to be the owner, but they have to have these things before they're able to. So, because like, even the boards of appeals, you've gotta be the property owner in order to make application, but sometimes when property's selling, and we've had that issue come up too, so as long as there was an option on the property, that's how they look.
I don't see that in our packets. I don't see that there's a documentation that says you're going to be the owner. So that was my concern there. My big one, everybody knows I'm all about sidewalks. And your plans you guys do a beautiful job. Don't get me wrong, the engineer did inspect out all the drainage things and the slopes of the roads. Fantastic. But I don't see any specs or details on sidewalks, which leads me to assume, and you know what that means, that you don't have plans for a 6-foot wide sidewalk across the front where Route 60 is. And I want something in writing that says, yes, this is absolutely gonna be an integral part of our Redwood development. There will be a sidewalk across the front of that property. And I don't see that in the paper that was given to me. So,
It is on there, there is a sidewalk there. To be clear though, we're calling out for a 4-foot sidewalk, so I don't know if there is.
6 foot, there's only one.
It is, I did see it in here, that's what I was looking for, that they did call out a 4-foot sidewalk along 60. But yeah, I think that sidewalk has to be 6 foot.
Okay. If
We just
if
need
you're
to amend
saying,
that.
I guess that's up to you.
yep.
If you're saying
You do show the sidewalk, because if I remember correctly, last time we became before the board, you suggested that.
I've
And
got
so
my
we
notes from that
comply.
meeting.
But it was a 4 foot, but if your code states it has to be 6 foot, then we will comply with that.
Speaking of the sidewalks, is it safe to assume that the Redwood development that was built off of Perkins Avenue in Huron and Sandusky area is identical to what you're proposing to build here? In other words, if somebody wanted to go look at the one out on Perkins, would those be the same kind of buildings, the same kind of setbacks, the same kind of retention ponds?
Yes.
Because I did go out there, and the retention pond looked a little deep and a little steep. And when I'm looking at these plans, and I know everybody in the audience had a chance to look at it, it looks like the retention pond is about 20 feet off the back doors of all these inner core units. Is there a distance there that you can tell me that from my back door to that retention pond, it's gonna be how far?
I don't know offhand, I could get you that information. I do wanna say that part of the pond design is you have to have what we call a flat top of bank. So there is, I believe it's 8 to 10 feet on the top that's flat. And then where the water line starts, within that first foot, there's what they call a safety bench. So it's over 10 feet, you're only dropping 1 foot. And the thought is, for safety concerns, if somebody were to fall in, they have 10 feet and you're only in 1 foot of water. So the ponds that we're proposing do have that safety bench built in. And I believe, I'd have to look again, I think we typically only make the ponds 6 to 8 feet deep. We do not make them super deep, and they have, 3 to 1 side slopes going down, so it's not like it's dug straight down. So they are at a 3 to 1 vertical to horizontal slope. So I don't know if that helps.
Where I saw it in Perkins, it looked a little steep. Now, it may be that the water's just really low and I was looking in that pond, but it looked to be, if I fell down in there, I know I couldn't get out, and everybody knows I'm not the healthiest guy.
Okay.
So, but if you've got a senior living in there, and they stumble down into that.
Or a
I'm looking,
child.
Can they get out? Yeah. Or a
So
child.
that is the purpose of the
Yeah.
safety bench, and we do have to do as-builds to make sure the ponds are built to the spec, so, okay, that's,
There were a lot of contour lines in it, it looked a little deeper than eight, it might be, I was just looking at it wrong.
yes.
That's entirely possible.
It's, I don't know, it's 6 to 8, I would say, I don't, we can count them if you want, but, that's typically what the pond depths are.
Now, what do you define as open space in this, what am I looking at when I'm looking at open space?
Yeah, it's anything behind the buildings, and I would say the area, the pond area, and that centralized area is what we would consider open space.
Okay,
Nothing obviously in front or, between building to building.
okay. Well, Bob, maybe you can help me out here. Can you count a stormwater retention pond as open space
Yes.
when you're doing density?
Yep.
Okay, cause I thought you couldn't, that you had just the actual real estate.
It-
Okay.
They serve a purpose, but cosmetically, they're called water features.
Yeah.
They're gonna have I think the one sheet I saw, there was gonna be a fountain in it. So yeah, they're considered water features and are included in the open space.
Okay. Why 137 units? Because it seems a little tight. When you take out, and like I say, my numbers don't mean nothing because for what? He just said the open space count. But when you take out that 9.9 acres and what's left, your density is like 10 units per acre. But if you count the pond, then it's back down to about 5.86. And our comprehensive plan here and everything else says 6 is the absolute max. So it sounds like you put every ounce of building that you could into this property. Is that a fair assessment or?
I would say that's not fair assessment. I mean, we could get more units in there, and I would also say that the open space is included in that calculation. I mean, that's just part of how you calculate open space, so you're right, it's not fair to take the open space out and then try to figure out what the density would be.
It's grammar.
Understand.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't see in this, and Bob, maybe you can help me out here too, is when we set the PUD regulation, there was no mention about outbuildings and things like that. And I know in the multifamily section, which is in section 15 of our zoning code, it says you can't have the outbuildings. Are we gonna make them say you can't have outbuildings anywhere and get that in writing so that 10, 15 years later, there's not a bunch of sheds out behind all these apartments? Not that there would be, but, and then the last one that I had right off the top of my head was, where are you dumping the snow? Because there was just a little bit of notes in here, but I didn't see a retention area where you're gonna dump 4 or 5 inches of snow when it comes down. So maybe you could clear that up for us.
I don't know if you wanna comment on the shed thing first.
The shed thing, won't happen. If you want us to put something in a deed restriction, more than happy to do that.
That would be kind of what.
We don't have sheds. We own the property. As far as the snow removal, we have a plan that probably I did not give to you this evening, my apologies for that, as we show when we have like snow where they have to bank it. So we have a plan for that, and I can certainly give that to you, tomorrow, because we have a plan for that. We do that with all our properties, because they're all private streets, we take care of them, and we do all the snow removal, the sidewalks, all that. And so I'm more than happy to give you that, but we have a plan that when we hire people to do the snow removal, they know exactly where to, put the snow.
Okay.
Unless it's like 100 feet, and that's a problem.
Speaking of the sidewalks again, I noticed at the Perkins development, which you said is gonna be exactly like this one, that you only have sidewalks in front of the units on one side of the street, but not both sides. And I was wondering if you could explain the logic there of why you only do sidewalks on one side of the street instead of contiguously around.
That is the pavement section that Redwood has
Yes,
chosen to go
and,
with.
and also, on that thing with the sidewalks, we were FHA compliant.
I understand.
So, we are told that we have to have sidewalks around our whole development, which we do. But it's only on the right side, and we got FHA compliant on that, and that's why we do it. And actually, we try to have less concrete. in our projects.
What I noticed, I guess I'm still out on it, is your sidewalk looked to be about 3 feet wide,
4 feet,
4 feet, okay? And it was right against the road
right,
with no curb bump.
That's
It was
right.
literally, it looked like just somebody widened the road out. So yes, it's a sidewalk, but I know people, and I know people that are gonna come visit and they're gonna park right on the sidewalk, thinking they can park on the side of the road.
Well, what we do, and I don't know if we showed this on this, but on that 4 foot area, we paint it out, and then we show like little people,
Okay.
so they can see that this is a walkway.
Yeah, it's not
And
there
we
yet.
do
it's
that
dusty, so.
because FHA. Every time you have a curb cut, you can become non-FHA compliant.
Right.
So that's why we do that now. We've worked very, very hard
For
to
me,
be FHA compliant with all of our neighborhoods, and this will be the same.
from a snow removal aspect, it looks like it makes sense. But from a safety aspect, I wanna see it proven to be safe. I'm sure it is, but it just, we wouldn't put sidewalks right up against the pavement on 60. And I'm not saying that people are gonna be driving up and through your development at the same speed, but I know how people drive. We've had a slew of accidents, and I just wanna make sure that we do everything. And I would be more comfortable, and that's just me, I don't know how the others feel, if there were sidewalks around, on both sides of the roads. And I don't know if that can fit into the plan, I know that's a lot of concrete, and it's not gonna be a deal breaker necessarily for me. But there has to be sidewalks from every unit to everywhere. And if you have to cross the street, you have to cross the street. 60 is a good example, there's sidewalks down the west side, but not down the east side. So it would be hypocritical for us to say, you gotta have them both sides, but we don't have it on both sides on our state route. Which brings me to the state route. ODOT's letter in here says that they've granted preliminary approval, but they won't grant final approval until you're the owners of the property.
I don't think they call it, I'd have to read the letter. They say approval and they won't issue the permit until Redwood's the owner, because they need, obviously, to issue it to the property owner.
Right.
But I'd have to reread it. I don't know that it says preliminary approval. I think it says approval, but.
This said final approval, and once we own the property.
But yeah, that's,
Access permit will be issued after we receive information showing Redwood is the owner of the parcels being developed. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about approval, it says access permit application status. That's the ODOT letter.
yeah, I think, Keith, I shared the email with you that
Right.
I don't know if you got the email from them too, but in the body of the email, they say the plans are approved, and this is basically their way of saying the plans are approved until Redwood owns the property.
Because the permit goes to the owner, and so they won't give us the permit until we own the property.
Yeah.
And we won't own the property until we buy it with our loan.
Okay.
But we have the access that's already been agreed to and permitted for that.
There was a lot of discussion on this, and some of this discussion occurred before our time. And I'm guessing you were the guy that was involved in about possibly taking your emergency access road out to our front side driveway there. I know ODOT would prefer that. They would prefer only one curb cut onto 60. I've got the emails to prove it, if you wanna see them. And they said they would, but you were told by a previous township official that it could not be done. And I think the misunderstanding was that it was supposed to come out in the helipad, which wasn't the case. What you guys had proposed, or ODOT, somebody sent a drawing. It would come out at where the driveway for the front parking lot is and be right there. And frankly, guys, I think that is probably the most makes sense thing for an emergency access point. And you make it a one-way only, so that you can only go into it, nobody can come out of it. And then when the ambulance rolls out of here, it goes straight in through that one way, and it doesn't have to get out on 60, cross traffic 2 times. And I'm still thinking that that would be the way to go. I don't know whether you guys would be amenable to revisiting that idea, but from a safety standpoint, I think it's a smarter idea. But again, just one guy. You guys?
I understand the logic behind it. The concern is that there's no guarantee Vermilion Township will always own this property.
Well,
So now you've got a road dumping into private property.
So why don't we just dedicate this as a public road up to the gates?
Well, I think technically the 60 should have marginal road, but, you know.
ODOT says you shouldn't have a curb cut within 1,300 feet of an intersection. They're asking for 2, and they're getting a waiver basically for both of those curb cuts, because they're both within that 1,300 feet. So if we can minimize that down to 1, that makes a less problematic for ODOT in the future. As you remember from last January, I would like to see you have a turnout lane where the people leaving Redwood can actually merge out. You do have plenty of space in the right of way to do it, but ODOT didn't provide that as an option for you, or you guys didn't agree to it. But we talked about Wine Street having the out and the end with a divided. I think that's a safer entrance than what you have proposed here. I'll be frank. I think it is a safer entrance than just a 2-lane in for 137 units. I'd like to see something a little bit bigger and wider, because if you're sitting here and there's a van sitting here and you're both wanting to turn, that's when the accidents are gonna happen. And right now, not your fault, right where you propose to go out on 60 is the most accident-prone area in Vermilion Township. It has the highest traffic accident count on 60, hands down. It's like 3 times worse than even our bad intersections down the road, because those gas stations are there. There's a lot of accidents there. And if we're gonna add 137 units with 7 trips per day based on your daily statistics, that's another 1,000 cars coming in and out, right there where it's the worst. So I'm gonna be a little extra cautious before I vote yes on anything like that. So I don't know what you guys feel as far as how it's in and out. You've seen these more than I have, but it just seems like it's packed in tight, it's up against the road. The berm is, I'm guessing, 4 feet high on the front at 60.
I would say, yeah, there's not a gigantic mound.
So there's a berm about this high, and there'll be a sidewalk, and then there'll be a ditch that's about equally as deep. So there's almost a mountain there. And anybody that lives in Ohio knows that when the wind blows over the hill, the snow drops on the other side. So I see that sidewalk being piled and drifted over into the ditch. So I don't know if you guys are gonna be out there plowing the snow on the sidewalk every time it snows or not. But I didn't know if there was a way to work around that, to move that hill back or put some other feature there. So,
I think we could take the mound completely out. I mean, that would be an option, I think.
Originally, I think we were asked to have that mound there, so we can take it away if you want.
well,
Like we were told when we went with the permanent plan approval, we were asked to do a mound there.
mhm.
So now if you're telling us you don't want the mound there, we'll not have a mound.
I do think the mound is only a couple feet high, and
It is.
it's
It looks
gonna
like it's only
have
about 4 feet high.
landscaping. I don't even know that it's 4 feet, but it's gonna have landscaping on it as well. I don't know if that's gonna help block the wind with the snow, but yeah, I guess it's up
Well,
to.
get rid of it.
I think the concern is, well, I'm not saying get rid of it, I'm just saying. the
What you
concern was-
said.
I said something better,
Well, then better is get rid of it.
your opinion. But, the concern from the residents that were at the last public hearing were that you would be looking at back doors and trash cans and bicycles. And that was the concerns that were voiced. I got the minutes if you wanna read it. And it was the idea of creating something between Route 60 and those back doors that you don't have to look into somebody's sliding door windows and see what's going on in their house.
Sure.
So, you know, I think if I were living in one of those apartments, I'd want some kind of privacy from all that traffic. That would be a concern for me as one of your tenants. Not that I'm ever gonna be one, but I could see a tenant saying, it's awful noisy right here, and you guys seem really close to 60 here. On this map where the picture is, that berm is in the right of way.
No, we wouldn't be doing any work in the right of way.
ODOT doesn't allow that.
No, the only work that's
Okay.
gonna be going in the right of way is they want us to continue that ditch, that drainage ditch that's along 60 now, but there won't be any, no berming or anything.
The existing parking lot that's in front of where the old store used to be, the edge of that parking lot, from what I saw on the maps last night, is where the right-of-way begins and ends.
Okay.
So that's how far back, it sets more on this side than it does on that side.
Be careful with those lines though.
Yeah, I know, the GIS jumps it off 5-10 feet, but. like I
Yeah,
said,
I'll assure you that ODOT does not let you do
No.
any work,
Nope.
other than if it comes from them, even in the right of way, so.
Again, turning that access road, and the access road on the the details you gave us said pavers.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that's a good idea coming on and off of Route 60.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't you originally told by ODOT it would only be stone? And I even said, when I heard that, I was like, there's no way. There's no way in the world I'm gonna approve that to be a stone.
That is correct.
They, just if I can interject, it went from stone to when we formally submitted to ODOT to them saying it has to be pavers. That we wanted it to be pavement, and they said, no, it has to be these
So-
pavers.
Oh, you're telling me ODOT's the one that said you gotta put pavers in?
I'm telling you that.
Yep,
Because our fire trucks are heavy, especially when they're full of water.
Yeah, they're reinforced concrete pavers, so,
Okay.
yeah, they're designed for heavy
Oh,
truck.
literally, an emergency road is gonna be used by our emergency equipment.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just concerned about that. And then, do you want,
The other thought was that ODOT did not want people to confuse that as an entrance and use that, so they thought using these pavers is more of a way to limit people pulling in and out of there, except for emergency use.
okay. And then, Ohio Fire Code Appendix D says that if you have more than 100 units, you have to have 2 entrances, which basically they have 1 and now an emergency one instead of 2. And they have to be the square of the hypotenuse from the property, which turns out to about 782 feet. You have 784 feet, which means your 2 driveways are too close together to meet Ohio Fire Code. So turning it into that driveway would solve that problem as well. And I know that's not a big thing, but let's make sure it's right.
And I think I could be wrong on this, chief, but I think the fire chief has the ability to waive those types of requirements. So that is something that the chief could look at.
And if he's gonna do that, that's great. We should document that
Oh, absolutely.
so that if there's an accident somewhere further down the road, at least we covered our bases and got everything right.
So, I mean, I do agree with some type of landscaping along 60. Not just for the people that are gonna be living there and not having headlights shine in their unit every time somebody's pulling out of the gas station, but yeah, when we have visitors to the township pulling out of the gas station, we don't want them looking at the back of these units. Have you had any discussion with ODOT about the ditch? Would they even consider letting you fill it in?
We were told that they wanted it to be restored to the previous, before there was any crossing, so they only want the 2 roadway crossings, you know, the one where where the entrance is and then where the emergency access, that was their guidance.
The other thing, as far as, the in and out lanes, I know that the other 2 developments north of here, both developments, I believe there's a left and right turn lane. So I do think that would be beneficial to incorporate a left turn and a right turn lane out of here.
Okay. I would say though, the one out of Wine Street, you know, that's a public road. This is what is considered a private drive, even by ODOT standards. So there is a difference, but I
Right.
just wanna.
Right. I mean, and I'm not saying that that's a deal breaker for me. I'm just recommending it just for the residents that are gonna be in there.
For the record, Wine Street has 66 houses on your Redwood condos and 40 or 49 houses total in the back. So the number of units down Wine Street is less than 100. And they have those 2 lanes there for less than 100. If you're proposing putting in 137, which is a lot more than 100, I think, I agree with Bob, the 2 lanes is necessary, so. Open space, green space, the 3% rule, what are we doing with that and with them? 3% of your acreage is 0.7 acres. And everything that I read says you either create green space with that 0.7 acres, or there's a financial contribution thing that can be done in lieu of green space.
There's something in the code.
If I could ask Chuck to chime in here, he's done a little research, I could be wrong.
I've done a little research, and I'm not seeing 3%, I'm seeing 519.021 does say that it is important that we have consideration for open space for the community. And every planned unit, PUD, development must have some open space. I can't tell you that it's 3% or 5% or any other number. It appears, at least from what I've heard, is that that is part of your proposal. I lived in Redwood apartments for 4 months when, the ones right, you know, that are here, while we were looking for a house. And they had some open space, so I'm sure that you're doing something, and I've heard about a pond, but I'm not able to confirm that number exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just,
Now we have open space, and then we have like the pond, and we put, it's a treatment, like we put in, you know, water fountains and such like that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Is that in the application? I mean, when is that finally determined? So it's not a surprise to anyone. I guess that is the one thing that I would like to know.
as far as what the open space acreage is,
As far as where it's gonna be, how big it's gonna be, et cetera, yeah.
I would say just refer to the
The site plan.
Yeah, it is broken
they're
out.
calling the wraparound behind all the buildings, the backyards of all the apartments as the open space.
Oh.
So,
And then
and
the interior as well, where
the
it'd be-
interior is a pond. There's not a lot of ground to, I don't see somebody setting a swing set in there for kids or
we don't
anything
have
like
swing
that.
sets.
I know.
Oh,
We don't,
park
we don't
benches.
allow
I just-
sheds,
I
we
was
don't allow
concerned
swing
about
sets.
No park benches for
Yeah, I
sitting?
think it's
No, not only if it's
actually,
FHA required.
if you look, there's a breakout, I mean, I think we're at
Yeah, I've
like
not seen
over 9 acres
Oh.
of what we're calling open space, but that
Okay.
does include the ponds, so, you know, that is, but
it. Thank you.
Where we at?
Any other questions? Going back to the sidewalk on 60, the more I sat here thinking about it, I don't know for sure that it is 6 foot.
Some code.
Is it 6 foot? Because I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I thought it was 5. What I would suggest is, you've got to match what's on 60. So if it's 6 foot on 60, you've got to go 6 foot.
Agreed.
I guess match, I mean, just looking at the aerials, it seems to vary from all
There's-
along that side, so I guess match to
There's newer
what?
sidewalk that
Okay.
was put in as part of a safe routes to school. I
Okay.
think that's the most abundant, and it's gonna be, it is 6 foot then, so it is 6 foot.
But I don't
Yeah.
think there's any issue if that's what your code calls for, then
That's what we'll do. And that can be part of the approval tonight. Yeah.
Anybody got anything to say? I mean, I know there's a lot of opinions out there. I know the residents have a lot of opinions. We all have opinions. We're all entitled to our own opinions. Me, I think this is a good thing. I'm in favor of it. You've got, I look at what I think is best for the township and what's best for this. I've got residential abutting it on the north side, residential abutting it on the west side, and other than this facility here, residential abutting it on the south side. To me, it only makes sense that this is residential. And if I lived in any property surrounding this, that's what I would rather have, because right now it's zoned C2. You could have a motel or a 24-hour truck stop there right now, and nobody could say a word. It's a permitted use. And I know I'd much rather have a low-impact, quiet residential neighborhood than a 24-hour truck stop. And I would think that the people that live around there would feel the same way. That's just my opinion. So I do support it. I think it's best for the township.
Do you think it's too dense?
No, it's the same as where I see everywhere.
I'm not against the development, don't get me wrong. I went out to Perkins, it's very nice. I think it's just too dense for this piece of property. And there's some unanswered questions like the well and the ODOT stuff. And I get what you're saying, you have to get the loan, you can't get the loan, you have the approval. Well, I'm of the feeling that the trustees can't give the approval until you own the property. And for that reason, You're not gonna get a yes vote from me tonight, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think that way, because like I said, I've been through this quite a few times, and having a signed purchase agreement contingent upon them receiving the necessary approvals that they need.
But we don't have that here tonight.
I would assume that if we got to this point, there is a signed purchase agreement.
Yes, I would just say this on, if I may. To come before you to get final development approval, we've spent $380,000 on engineering, on site plan, on permitting, everything. So we had to do that for me to get here tonight. Okay? You don't really care about that, I get that. But we did everything according to your code to be here tonight. You gave us preliminary plan approval 6 months ago, whatever that time frame was, I don't remember now.
14 months ago.
And you gave us parameters, and we agreed to those, and we came before you tonight with those. And I will say this, to spend $380,000, and if you wanna turn this down, go ahead, it's your prerogative. We've done everything according to your code.
There is a signed purchase agreement. I think it was part of the first.
It was part of the first,
So
yeah.
we didn't include it in this one, just so you know.
It
So
was
they
on the
should
first
have it.
one.
We should have it somewhere, it just was not in that packet.
It was on the preliminary plan application, and there were 2 purchase agreements, because there's 2 properties. And so there was one, and there was another one. And that was part of the preliminary plan application that you got.
380,000 is a big number, but on 137 units at approximately $2,000 to $2,500 a unit, you'll make that back in 2 months.
Actually, that's not true. This is a $30 million project
I agree.
that we wanna bring, and for you to say that, that's incorrect.
How much money do you believe? It doesn't matter. It's
I'm
not
done
what
with
you
that.
say.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I know what the property's gonna generate potentially. It's not like they're going broke trying to make this happen. And like I said, the retention ponds are too close to the back doors. If you've ever seen a kid drown, you know that it's too close, period. It's just too close. And there was no offer to fence it. That was part of the discussion 14 months ago, of putting some kind of fence or cattails. And we did talk about the ledge, and that's in there, I agree. But I'm just not comfortable with it, it's that simple. I'm done talking.
All right. Well, I'm going to make a motion to approve the final development plan for Redwood with conditions that, number 1, the sidewalk along State Route 60 is 6 foot. That there is a deed restriction prohibiting any type of outbuildings. And that you amend the paperwork, of course, to reflect that it's not in the city of Vermilion before you file
Yes.
a final.
All 3 items, agreed.
And the sidewalk?
On both sides in it,
No.
being a private street, if it was public streets, it would be different, but private street, that's theirs, that's the way I feel about it. So that would be my motion with those conditions. Is there a second?
Not for me.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded.
Of course.
Of course.
Any discussion?
I think we've had enough discussion. I think that we have a duty as trustees to follow the zoning code very specifically. I don't feel we did that tonight, so I can't support it.
Well, I do know that they do have purchase agreements, and typically a purchase agreement is a legal binding option to take ownership in property, and it's been
recognized that way as long as I've been in public government, local government, so that's why I'm not concerned about that.
No other discussion? Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Bachman?
No,
Trustee Kurtz, yes, motion carries. Next
Thank
on
you.
the agenda is the hotel excise.